So are you talking or are you communicating? We need to go beyond how brilliant and bright and how great we are at what we do. That's important to convey, but connection is really about where it's at. So let me give you an idea of what you can hope to gain. Our clients are looking for something different, and they really demand something new from us. And so I'm going to be talking tonight about reframing the experience, whatever that might be, that new client contact, that interview, that networking event, into ways that you can actually gain. I talk about both gain opportunities and enjoy the connection. Also, one of the things I learned through my doctorate degree is was fascinating going back to school, because the field of psychology is very different than what it was some 30 years ago when I got my master's degree. And so the neuroscience really has taught us and uncovered significant amounts of information about how our brains are impacted, how we show up the way we do. And so I'm going to share with you some basic brain science tonight so that you too can understand how we're influenced in ways that we don't even know it. We'll also identify 10 common triggers that tend to promote a fear-based model of thinking, a fear-based mindset that will affect our ability to focus, pay attention, and definitely influence how we show up. And then lastly, the importance of implementing a framework for how to shift your focus and to do it in ways that are strategic, persuasive, and ethically. Because we don't want to coerce people, of course, but we want to be able to influence people through our intentional strategies to achieve the kind of impact that we hope to achieve. And so I've already mentioned this. Is it fear-based or is it opportunity-based? Just that shift can make a difference in how you show up. I know that, this is a networking group. I've been through many networking groups, and sometimes we probably all feel, oh, do I really want to go? That can be that fear-based and setting in and distracting us from how we show up well. We oftentimes, we don't show up with intention. We don't show up with strategy for what we hope to achieve. And I'll share with you a tip that I've taught many people in terms of how to maximize their opportunities. Because what we now know, and again, coming out of the neuroscience, is that emotions, feelings precede all of that cognitive stuff we know and do influence outcomes. Whether it's fear or frustration, whatever that emotion might be, that's before we can even think through what's happening. Our emotions also convey information. And again, how we show up, I say that a lot, but it really means a great deal in terms of our facial expression, the look of our eyes, the smile or the grimace, just even how tight our body posture might be. That is sending huge messages to people around us who we're trying to influence, and we may not even know it. We all have behaviors that can adversely impact others in their engagement with us. And again, we don't even know it. And so I draw a lot on the role of emotional intelligence, and I'll say a little bit more about that. And that anxiety or anxiousness, because I don't necessarily want to talk about the diagnosis of anxiety, but anxiousness is a natural feeling that many of us experience, oftentimes around those new or unknown things. We can feel anxious about that, not knowing what to expect. And that's where preparation strategically can be such a game changer in what we get out. So it's time to reframe. Well, what do I mean by that? Reframing is one of the key tools and strategies that people like myself use in the world of dispute resolution. And it literally is taking a negative, whatever that is, a negative number, a negative concept, a negative word, and transforming it, there we go with that word again, or by reframing it into what we call a neutral or a negative. I mean, a neutral or a positive. By doing so, we are actually shifting our brain from our emotional center, which is where we tend to bear those negative thoughts and emotions, into the more positive and cognitive construct of where we're intelligent. So it's all about reframing, because feelings are contagious, and it goes both ways. It's what we call the law of reciprocity. One of the things that we learned very quickly in the pandemic, and I work a lot with attorneys and mediators throughout the country and the world, in terms of, well, how do we do mediation online now? How do we? It seems so impersonal, so cold, and yet the reality is what we learned is that mediations were highly successful by making the transfer onto a virtual medium. And why? Well, I knew the answer very quickly, because when we're in the room with somebody, we can actually feel the heat, so to speak. And if we're in conflict with somebody, we can feel that tension. We can feel that energy, that negative energy that comes out. And by going virtually, we can actually reduce some of that so people can stay or remain more engaged in the cognitive aspects of resolving disputes. And so there is heat, there is energy because of what's going on in the brain and throughout our body. The mind-body connection is real and alive because how we show up then does set the tone and impacts those around us. And so whether, again, it's the grin or the grimace, will convey a message to the other person that will then direct how they respond to us. And how we connect and respond then becomes very important in terms of how we can shift the mindset of the person that we influence. Now, you can imagine being a mediator myself and going into difficult situations. I actually do deal with a lot with hostility and negative attitudes and people resistant to making changes. And yet, there are ways to communicate and convey that start shifting the mindset by how I sound, the words I use, and then also my physical presence, even on screen. And I just had a very difficult coaching session. I'm working with a major college district in my community. And this is an example of where making these shifts makes such a difference. Conflict's been going on for at least 2 years, or at least before the pandemic. And I've learned it's even been longer than that. And it's gotten to such an impasse that the vice president of the college has said, you can't have contact together. They're on the same team, not very viable on a long-term basis. And what I've also learned is that there are a lot of poor behaviors that generate negative reactions from those around them. And so I'm in the process of sort of unraveling this conflict and identifying the sources and determining which strategies or interventions can be most effective. And so when we take a look at that, that's part of uncovering the business conflict. And so are we communicating or are we talking? Too often we're focused on what we want to say rather than hearing what the others have to say. And I draw on Stephen Covey's term of seek first to understand before you seek to be understood. Seek first to understand before you seek to be understood. And too often we come at it the opposite way. We're so quick to want to tell you our side of the story. We're quick to tell you what I can do for you. It just blows me away on LinkedIn, how many people will reach out and, well, let me tell you what I can do for you. And it's like, well, what do you even know about me? How do you even know I might need your services? How about making a connection before we actually try to jump into business? And how many else have had that experience? Yeah, tell me, I'll tell you what I can do, but I don't know anything about you. Or I just had a call this morning. Somebody who's offering to help me develop my programs into online courses, something I've been wanting to do. And then it was like, well, tell me more about you and what you do. And it's like, you contacted me. I mean, don't you know some of what I do? How about some artful questions to learn more about what are my goals and what do I want to do with this? But it was just like, have you done your homework? Have you done your homework? Have you really looked into some of my background before you try to push your services on me? So that was sort of a turnoff for me. So, because what we know is our brain starts reacting to what's being said before we even really comprehend it. And I'm going to get a little bit into the brain science so you understand the circuitry that's there. And it's a natural drive to survive. It's in all of us. And that's what we've really learned with our study of the neuroscience, is how this just sort of unfolds and how it does influence our ability to think cognitively and rationally. And oftentimes, our emotional reaction, and I'm going to use that word deliberately, reaction, is in response to past memories or beliefs or words being said. I've just worked with somebody yesterday who has done a lot of personal self-development throughout the years. And yet he's in a workplace where he had to start working with a particular coworker, and he just lost it. He blew up in the workplace. And so this was a management referral saying, that is not okay, and you need to redirect your behavior. And so what we talked about is that there are behaviors that this particular person demonstrates that just throws him back into some of his childhood experiences. It could be the way mom or dad talked to you, or maybe the way you were criticized. And so it's important to realize that when we show up and try to influence people, that there's all this stuff going on in the background. And this is important for you to understand, but also when you get a reaction from somebody else, what might be going on for them. And it's fear-based. Again, it's a reaction to what they see, what they hear, and what they experience. And when we talk about the brain science, it is important to know that we have some natural brain chemicals that go on. And so depending upon where we are in our self-management portion of emotional intelligence, we may be flooded with adrenaline, charging us up, taking action, causing us to react. Or we may be flooded with cortisol, which literally overwhelms us from doing anything, and we may be caught in a freeze reaction or a flight reaction. We want to get out of there. And so it's important just to realize all of this, and to have the courage and curiosity to take a deeper dive for yourself, because it starts with ourselves, holding ourselves accountable to how we show up and how we influence people in ways that we may not even know it. And then different emotions can trigger different responses, and then it's timing. I've used the word a couple of times, strategic. We want to be strategic with this. And I know from hearing all of your introductions how brilliant and experienced and artful you are in how you approach your work. And yet, again, our customers are demanding something different today in terms of how we connect with them. And this is where we want to be mindful then of our own reactions as well as the reactions of others. And I'm going to take this opportunity to elaborate a little bit on emotional intelligence. There's 4 key parts: our self-awareness, self-management, other awareness, and then our relationship management. And the more we know about all 4 of those, then the better we can engage in meaningful and constructive relationships. And so as it says here, anger can lead to impatient and rash decision-making. Excitement can lead to quick decisions without much thought. And then sadness or fear can lead to that uncertainty and actually cloud our ability to make decisions. Now, I'm curious because I tie in a lot to the 4 main communication styles. How many of you have ever taken the DISC communication assessment? Anybody familiar with it? Okay. Before I leave our program today, I'm going to put into the chat box a website where I actually have 3 steps to mindset shift, what I call the 3D formula. And this will be an opportunity for you to start your dive into understanding your emotional intelligence, understanding your fear-based communication style, as well as understand your conflict management style. And this is the foundation I take all my clients through, and so I'm giving that away to you. So a little bit about the brain. As it said in the description for the program, is it that interview? Is it that networking event that you're going to? Or is it that first client contact? Or is it just a difficult conversation or confrontation with an existing client? I'm sure we've all had those. And it's about being prepared. So what this slide demonstrates for you is that we do have, this emotional brain. And you can see down in the very lower right where it says the brain stem, that's our reactive part. And that's where, what we see and what we hear and what is said, our brainstem starts reacting to that as part of our drive to survive. And it sends signals into our body as well as back up through the brain. And then we have what we call the limbic system. And that's the center of the brain which is actually our warehouse of emotions. That's our reactive part of it. And then we have the cerebral cortex, which is actually way up here. And that's our executive human brain, where we're logical and rational. And that's where we hold our intelligence and we can make strategy and all of that. And yet, what happens so often is that we get, our brainstem, as it says here, response goes in the body, but then goes back up to the brain. And so we then experience some kind of emotion. And emotion is both positive and negative. And that's in that core of the brain. And there's several pieces that are tied into that. But what happens is that in that transfer from the brainstem into the limbic system, we go through the amygdala. How many people have heard of the amygdala hijack? Anybody? Okay, a few of you, yeah. Well, Daniel Goleman, the father of emotional intelligence, coined that term. However, he recently posted it on LinkedIn not too long ago, just a few months ago, that, you know what, I think I got it wrong. It's not so much the amygdala, because there are several parts of the brain. It's really an emotional hijack. We get flooded between adrenaline and cortisol into our emotional brain that either makes us react like that, or we become immobilized. Again, that drive to survive, that fight, flight, freeze response. And so knowing that there's this neurobiology going on, then our job then is to create space in that moment, in the heat of the moment, to actually step back and breathe and reflect briefly what's happening. And in that space of the moment, it's enough time, nanoseconds, for the neurological firing to get through the limbic brain and up to the prefrontal cortex, which is where we're cognitive. It's short, but it takes practice. And this is where we can be masters of the moment. And we can get back to that intelligent part of us where we can actually demonstrate our expertise in ways that are influential to other people. Because these are the 10 common triggers then for a fear-based mindset. And again, all of this is happening under the waterline or in the dark depths of our brain. And so it could be a sense of rejection, maybe a betrayal, unjust treatment, challenged beliefs, a sense of helplessness, being excluded or ignored, disapproval or criticism, insecurity, loss of independence, loss of control. And I guess I'm just wondering, for any of you, any of those resonate when you think about maybe that dread of going into the interview or going to that networking event or dealing with that difficult client? Anybody? Okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna, this isn't about going into your childhood right now to figure out which one it is and how, what causes that. But these are things I want to give you some gems that you can work with and say, what's this about? I mentioned my college district program right now. And there is one person who is pretty challenging for the entire team. And it's sort of at the core of the conflict. And so it was, I was sort of not looking forward to today's meeting. And then I had to stop and plan to say, okay, how can I get across some of these concepts? And so what I ended up doing with her is, rather than addressing some of her difficult behaviors directly, I actually shared with her some of my training content from other programs. And this slide is one of them. And to sort of educate her that this is what happens for people. And this is, how we can influence people in ways we don't even know it. And I'm not talking about influencing in a good way. Okay. And so she tends to show up with behaviors that influence people adversely. And so we had a chance to go over this. And again, I've given her some things to think about, because today's leadership is a different mindset. Again, we focused on the past in terms of how much we knew and being in charge. And that just doesn't cut it today, folks. Particularly with our younger generations in the workplace. They've had the let's say, opportunity to see how their parents and maybe other family members and other friends have been treated in the workplace, and they're just not willing to put up with it. And so today's leadership mindset is different. And it's a shift to looking at adversity as an opportunity. It's also an opportunity to recognize that, sometimes we need to experience those painful moments, because out of pain comes the momentum for gain. I get a lot of people who say, I just can't take this anymore. I'm tired of dealing, I dread going to work. I'm tired of dealing with people who can't get along. Or I'm frustrated with clients who won't do what I tell them to do. I get that a lot from attorneys, by the way. As far as, I give them this great advice and then they don't follow it. I'm sure maybe, for those in finance, I give them this great financial plan and then they don't follow it. And then they wonder why they haven't moved along and been more successful. And then I like to use this quote too: in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. And all of those represent a shift in mindset. Rather than looking at the problem, what's the opportunity for a better outcome? And that's where we can shift our words. I'll share with you an example in shifting the words alone. I was just doing a training program yesterday and didn't realize it was the human resources director when he said this, because he came in late and we'd already done introductions. But we were talking about time management. And he was saying, oh yeah, when I have a big project to do, I have to clean my desk. And he was, so everybody who knows that when they see me cleaning my desk, I'm trying to avoid what I need to do. And I said, well, let's reframe that. Let's reframe that. It's to me, it's not avoiding. You're cleaning your desk to prepare yourself for excellence. You're cleaning your desk to prepare yourself for greatness. Because if we have too much stuff around, it's cluttering, it's distracting. And so this is where we want to create our spaces when we're working with our clients as well, creating those spaces so that we can have a good opportunity. So that avoid to preparing was a shift, and it opened up the mindset differently. We want to look for small ways in which we can give little shots of adrenaline to generate enthusiasm and momentum. And so it's a way of shifting how we look at things. I like this quote from Phil Knight, and I'll go ahead and read it. There's immutable conflict at work, in life, and in business, a constant battle between peace and chaos. Neither can be mastered, but both can be influenced. How you go about that is the key to success. And so I want to have all of you thinking in your own mindset about this is about getting better and better. It's about mastering those challenging situations. I oftentimes get a lot of very high level people in their organizations or executives who, I don't need to know that. I'm really good at what I do, or I already make millions in sales or whatever. It's like, okay, that's great. And just think about how much more you could really do if you could influence and affect people even more positively. There's always opportunity to learn and grow. And this is where we want to shift the mindset. Because in today's world, leaders are influencers in ways we probably didn't even imagine before. And we have the opportunity to influence people at every level, at every turn, by how we show up. And so I like to use the concept of a harbor. For those of you who may not know the California coast, this is actually Catalina Island, a place called Avalon Bay. And beautiful little place. It's hard to believe you're actually in the LA County or even in the United States. But a harbor is just that. It's a place to go in for protection out of a storm or the high seas. And so our job, if we think about it as our job is to create a harbor where people can safely engage with us. And to safely engage with us, we need to know our parameters so that we can use them effectively, strategically, and artfully. And it's important that we model the way for psychological safety. What does that mean? Well, I like to draw upon physical safety because we've come a long way since the days of the Golden Gate Bridge. I don't know if you know this, but they used to calculate major construction projects like that in the cost, in the terms of how many people would die as a result of this. And they would factor that in to the cost of a project. And so with the Golden Gate Bridge, that's when they really started looking at how can we avoid, I mean, that's going to be a very dangerous venture building that bridge across San Francisco Bay. And so that's where we really saw implementation of, hard hats, and safety gloves and steel-toed shoes, goggles, safety nets, harnesses. And instead of losing the estimated 33 lives for that project, they lost 11. Well, 11 is tragic, but it's only 1/3 of the 33. So what happened? And one of the things, by implementing all of these safety practices, and they reduced it by 2/3, is that actually 10 of those 11 actually died in one accident. They all fell to their death because of something that broke. So we've come a long way in physical safety. But quite frankly, we have not come very far at all in psychological safety. And, yeah, we're successful, we're making money, and the economy has been booming. At the same time, when we take a look at workplaces, the level of claims for discrimination, hostile workplace, retaliation are higher than ever. And so this is where we, as leaders in our respective fields, can model the way for psychological safety, changing the tone, shifting the direction for how we show up. And to create those positive and encouraging atmospheres. I like Brene Brown's quote on leadership. I define a leader as anyone who takes responsibility for finding the potential in people and processes, and who has the courage to develop that potential. And so this is where, again, engaging and networking with people differently can make a difference. I like to draw on the words of the Dalai Lama. Believe it or not, there is extensive research going on now into the science of compassion. Stanford is one of the leaders, and Stanford's working with the Dalai Lama's key right person on this. I was doing some research a few years ago about compassion. I was researching different emotions to better understand the neuroscience of it. And in one of the Dalai Lama's presentations at that Times Square, New York City, a number of years ago, where he coined compassion as really nothing more than warm-heartedness. And that really stuck with me, because after all, who wants to show up cold-hearted? Not, right? Do you want to be known by others as being cold-hearted? No, people are going to identify and connect with you when they feel that sense of warmth, caring, concern. And so it's with influence, persuasion, compassion, and dignity. And so from a scientific perspective, a show of compassion is healthy. Thank you, Najandra. Appreciate that. A show of compassion is healthy for you as the giver of it, as well as for me, the receiver of it, and vice versa. We now know and can see the neurobiology of our brains and bodies shift in positive, more healthy ways when we operate with a mindset of compassion. So there is an arousal component, the dance of chemistry. There is a way of, it also helps us reshift our brain functioning and get back into the more cognitive aspects of our emotional intelligence. And it also influences the release of natural brain hormones. And I picked out 3 right here. I've talked about, adrenaline and cortisol before, and cortisol is our stress hormone. We want to de-escalate that because too much cortisol will cloud our brain, flood our brain. Instead, when we show compassion, we can see an increase in what's called the oxytocin, not Oxycontin, okay, oxytocin. It's a love chemical in our brain, the feel good. I want to be with you kind of thing. I want to listen to you. So we want to do things in ways that help generate that. And then also increases dopamine and serotonin. And so the reduction of serotonin impacts anxiousness that we talked about before, but also can make people feel like, oh, there's something in this for me here. Before, when I gave the example about how people approach me on LinkedIn about, what I can give you, that's all about their reward. It wasn't about my reward. How would I benefit from working with you? And so again, shifting that mindset to embrace a different look. Now, I want to share with you, I do have an ebook that sort of ties all this in. And if you do purchase it, I'm going to put a plug here. If you do purchase it, all the proceeds go to a program called Kids Managing Conflict that originated here in Southern California. And so we work to bring that into the schools. And Lou and I have been talking about the work that he's doing in schools as well. And so if you do buy it, all the proceeds go to Kids Managing Conflict. However, if you get it on Kindle, it's free as a download. So if you capture that QR code, it'll take you right to where you could order it. So I'll give you a moment just to capture that if you wanted to with your phones. Lou, I take it you're going to make this program available, or
Yes.
the slide deck? Okay, so you do that here. Yeah. So what we know about top performers, and this is what they're teaching in business schools today, is, yeah, we want to know the technicalities, the specifics of your field. They're being taught that in MBA schools and so forth. And also I see this in medical schools and law schools. There are now more and more classes in education about the psychology of human behavior, the neuroscience of human behavior, and how to connect with people more. Because what top performers know that we use both persuasion and influence when we connect with people, but there's a difference. The act of persuasion is using our brilliant minds to leverage what we know and to try to get at rational changes in direction. But influence is more from our presence, maybe our charisma, that we show up with people. Again, the look, is it the frown or the smile? And that both really seek change in attitudes and behaviors. Again, we're here to influence our potential customers or the people we work with. And so how do we do that? Well, it's a combination of persuasion and influence. But there's a couple things to keep in mind here. Persuasion is really about the art of communication. And so are you just talking about what you know how to do and what you can do for somebody, or are you really communicating that? And that's where using Covey's seek first to understand before you seek to be understood, engaging your clients through communication. And influence works through the impact of our presence. As Maya D'Angelo says, people seldom remember what you say, but they will remember how you made them feel. And so if I walk away with a positive engagement with you, then I'm more likely to come back and want to do business with you. But if I'm left sort of flat, it's like, well, I could go someplace else too. So you haven't connected with me. You haven't made that link with me, that connection with me. And so keep that in mind. It's a combination of both persuasion and influence, not just what you know, but how you show it and how you convey it and communicate it. And so I'm going to give you a little technique, okay? And guess what? It doesn't even cost you anything except your awareness to put it to use. So what it is, the impact of peak performance. And the bottom line, okay, I've already talked about the Dalai Lama's warm-heartedness, but then acknowledgement. We don't do enough acknowledging of where other people are coming from. And so acknowledgement is not appreciation. I oftentimes get pushback when people, well, what if I don't appreciate anything about that person? So we're not working on appreciation. We're talking about acknowledgement, because we can acknowledge something about somebody, even though we may not like the person, we may not appreciate that person, etc. But it really, really creates a different atmosphere for your engagement. And then it's the awareness of others, that third part of emotional intelligence, about being practicing your mindfulness. One of my guest speakers on my podcast, Decoding the Conflict Mindset, that was from the Philadelphia area, Henry Yampolsky. And I liked what he had to say, in that mindfulness is not just about our well-being, getting better at understanding our well-being and how we take care of ourselves. Mindfulness is also about getting better at sensing the needs of others. And again, that goes right back to emotional intelligence as far as the self-awareness and the other awareness, key. And of course, connection. In today's world, even though we have so many electronic devices and ways of communicating instantly, the rate of suicide is highest than ever. We certainly know the number of school shootings is rampantly growing, unfortunately. And there's a sense of isolation that's greater than ever before. The incidences of mental health, and that covers a whole gamut of things, but depression and anxiety, diagnosable conditions are higher than ever. And so we need to do our part. We need to do our part as leaders, as professionals in our field, to make connections. And so the peak performance approach is that. And I've given you the PEAC as anchors on 3 areas that you can identify. For example, thank you so much. I want to just appreciate acknowledge your presence here today and your effort in being here on time. And thank you for your positive remarks. I really loved your openings. So those are ways of acknowledging, and then you can take it through it. E is for effort, energy, enthusiasm. You have such a great attitude or a great approach to things. I really enjoy being around you, because being around you gets me up too. So that's a way of acknowledging. A, attitude, achievement, accomplishment. That's quite an accomplishment. I think it was Bernadette who just got a new job or is transitioning to a new job. Great, that's wonderful, growth. Karen's gone back to college and working on her degree. That's great. Learning is always ongoing. And then C, it sounds like you've been really challenged by that. I see that. Or contributions. Again, thanks for contributing to that way of thinking or that project. And then, that's really a great show of compassion. I can really sense that warm-heartedness of you. Acknowledging is huge in terms of helping to boost people up, helping people feel good about engaging with you, and helping people feel that they are truly a part of something going on. Again, that sense of isolation is rampant in today's world, even as connected as we are with technology. So I want you to stop and think about that. What can you do differently moving forward to make more positive connections in ways that influence outcomes in the way you want to go? That's where we talk about ethically. Again, how can we show up in ways that draw upon these key components of emotional intelligence, knowing the science for how our brains and bodies work, and understanding that these are things known scientifically that will make a difference in terms of how people show up and how they respond to you. And so again, we want to redirect our engagement with others in directions that go the way we want them to go. Because after all, isn't what you promote good for other people? Isn't what you promote supposedly of service, of value to other people? So why wouldn't they want it? But again, it's how we deliver on that makes the difference, the connection. So are you talking or are you communicating? So here are the 4 tips that we have learned from the pros. And this comes from several resources, educational institutions that I've researched to find this out. And so we want to expand our interpersonal skills, not just our expertise, our knowledge, our services, but how we connect with people based on these elements of behavioral psychology. If I had my way, everybody would be taking a psychology class. Everybody would be taking a dispute resolution class. And you can, if you bring me into your organization, I'll give that to you. But what we know is your first impressions. Those first impressions are monumental and lasting. And so unless we have that positive first connection, what I do when I get people who are reaching out to me, but it's all push on what they have to offer me without knowing anything about me. I just usually say, thank you very much. I've already got somebody working on that, or thank you very much. I'm not interested at this time. So I always acknowledge them. I don't just blow them off, because I want to lead them with a good impression about me too. I don't need to have anybody talking badly about me to other people. Well, Dr. Dupree didn't even get back to me. No, I always respond and respond appropriately. But then also psychological commitment. Again, I'll go back to Covey, seek first to understand before you seek to be understood. Ask for their input. And so I like to say it's perspective taking. And so, I'd like to hear first from you. What are your 3 key challenges? Hear from them what's going on. Why now? What prompts you to want to reach out to me now with what I do? What's the pain point here? What's happening in your organization that's not working well for you, which is why you're seeking change. So those are ways of asking questions up front, asking for input. Because when you ask for input first before you push out what you have to offer, now people feel that that you're interested and that you want to know more about them, and that you're actually truly interested in customizing what you have to offer to what their specific needs are. So ask for input. And then mirroring. And what that really means is we want to create the opportunities for identifying similarities in areas that we already connect with. And so, for example, I oftentimes will use the picture of my dog as a way of connecting. It gets a little conversation going about dogs, okay, or pets. Or if I talk about geographical considerations, I share with you the picture of Catalina Island or Avalon Bay. And so we want to identify, connections that we can have, because people feel closer when they know that they can identify with you. Normally, I like to take people through 2 minutes of connection. And so I have an activity where I actually have you practice this so you can see what that's like. And it's amazing then the things that emerge. And it's a way of practicing or putting to use all of these different concepts. And by doing so, I oftentimes will then frame it, like if we have a positive connection, isn't it a lot easier to go to that person later when there really is a problem or a conflict or a difference? And the answer is yes, unequivocally yes. It may still be challenging, but that's where we have to have the courage. If we don't step forward and ask questions, if we don't step forward and be curious in eliciting their responses, then we may never have that connection for doing business together. And so again, it's shifting the mindset. And then also likability. I have a lot of managers and leaders who will say, I don't care if they like me. Well, you should. People are more likely to follow your lead if they actually like you and respect you. And so acknowledgement, the peak performance acknowledgement approach is a way of doing that. It's creating that likability. And the research shows time and time again that those leaders who are most revered in their organization or their professions are those that actually know a little bit about the people who follow. So this is an opportunity for you to improve your influence inside and outside your organization. I'm going to start to end here on these words. Again, it's all about mindset, attitude, optimism. It's again shifting towards that positive, or at least the neutral. And this comes from Lao Tzu. And watch your thoughts, they become words. Watch your words, they become actions. Watch your actions, they become habit. Watch your habits, they become character. And watch your character, it becomes your destiny. So we're influencing perceptions every step along the way. And so it really is up to us as individuals to be accountable about how we show up, seeking to minimize those times when we don't show up very well, because people are more likely to remember the negative than the positive. In fact, research shows it takes 5 positives to overcome the effect of 1 negative. So when we talk about attracting new clients, we might want to think about what can we do to retain our existing clients. And if you're one of those who are fortunate to have some really long-standing relationships, then kudos to you. You're probably doing some great things. And so again, shifting our mindset, paying attention to our words and actions. We've heard the saying, actions speak louder than words. And this is the way we can show up with greater influence and impact. We want to influence people in ways that impact them positively, so they want to keep coming back and engage with us. And we can all get better and better at that. So I want to say thank you, and I encourage you to reach out, because it's all about connection, right? So connect, learn and grow with curiosity and courage, move your experience forward. I particularly invite you to listen to my podcast, Decoding the Conflict Mindset. I have thought leaders from various walks of life, different professions, that talk about some of the challenges of dealing with people in their industries, as well as dealing with conflict. And so that's something available to you. And if you like what we had to say, appreciate your review. And with that, we're ready to open it up for questions, if there are any.
There are. And let me say first that I found it remarkable just how much of what you spoke about resonates with me now in what my organization does. Things like creating a safe harbor for children now.
Yeah.
In what they've gone through and what they are going through, to have a safe place to communicate is really quite important, and to build that trust. So I thought, for me personally, it hit home. So Najendra had a question. How do we maintain consistency of best narrative at all times, as there are both external and internal factors that influence our narrative?
Well, that's a great question, and thank you for posing that. And I will go back to what Lou, you actually said in the very beginning, as far as their 30, 60, 90 minutes or 90-second elevator pitches. Frankly, it's about practice. And it's also about humility. And so what I mean by that then is that, we want to create that space. And it's really nanoseconds of just, and I like to say, step back before you step forward. And in that space of stepping back, that physical stepping back, even leaning back in your chair, actually influences the motor control centers around that are located on either side of our emotional brain. That redirects the neurological behavior right there. And so with that stepping back, take a couple of deep breaths, because that will slow down your heartbeat, that will expand your lungs, as well as slow down the brainwave activity. That's nanoseconds, folks. And so just creating that space of mindfulness then allows you to get back to the cognitive brain, to the maintaining the narrative that you want to maintain. Okay, if we react too quickly or we get thrown off track, that's where we're more likely to react out of the emotional brain, and we are likely to say and do things that are hurtful, harmful, and damaging, and we can't take it back. We can't push rewind. Okay. And the other thing then too, Najendra, is that if we're all going to step into it, we cannot be 100% perfect. That's not, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. And so in having said that, we're all going to misstep at times. And so if you say, you know what, let me just step back a second. I said that and it didn't come out the way, I didn't like the way it came out. So let me replay it. Okay, you can't rewind it, but you can play it again. Okay, and so let me try this again. Let me start over. And so that's another thing, is that acknowledge, apologize for it. I didn't like the way that sounded. Let me try again. I got distracted. I was thinking about something else. The other thing I do as a mediator too, before I go into a situation, is one is always arrive early. Okay, because I want to make sure that I'm centered and in my best place I can be, because I'm going to be dealing with everybody's conflict. And so getting centered before you go into that potentially challenging or difficult conversation can again also help you prepare. And I was just sharing this with somebody else. Somebody said yesterday, I don't normally write this stuff out. And I said, oh, please do write out what you want to say. Don't just type it, because the act of handwriting actually embeds the message in our brain better than keyboarding. Okay, so I gave you about 3 or 4 different tips, Najendra, on answering your question.
Yeah, which is why I'm always taking notes. I may not ever refer to them,
Mhm.
but it does reinforce it for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
May I add to that, Lou, is that
mhm.
I take notes too. And so what I do then is I scan them into my client file so that I have them. That's what I did with Lou when I first met him. But I also got the electronic handwriting tablet. And so that's already electronic and I can just save that. So I don't just throw my notes away, they get saved.
Okay, so Karen had a question.
Mhm.
How do we maintain consistency of best narrative at all times? Oh, no, that's
So
the
that's,
same
yeah.
question.
Mhm.
What happened here? Oh my, okay. I thought I was copying them. Hang on.
Okay, I think I.
A second here.
Lou, I can jump in and read the question if you'd like.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Dr. Dupree, wonderful presentation. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
And it was touching on some of the things that I'm working on in my dissertation. So specifically looking at organizations, which of course are made up of individuals, and how they reach post-traumatic growth. So one of the themes of my dissertation is resilience. And I was wondering, do you find a person is pre-wired for resilience? And does that help them open up their mindset?
That's a really interesting question, Karen. Pre-wired for resilience. Yes and no. I mean, that whole nature nurture dynamic that's been forever around is there. I actually used to believe a lot was in nurture, not so much nature, but it's both. And so we are wired in certain directions, and that's why I go back to communication styles and conflict management styles. Those are definitely very wired. But the beauty is we can learn to make a different thing. I guess I don't know the scientific answer for that, Karen, but I feel that resilience is something really that's more cultivated because of our upbringing. And again, in adulthood, we can develop more resilience by shifting our mindset and growing. So I can't give you a scientific answer, but it is definitely something, resilience is definitely something to cultivate, because the more resilient we are, and not resistant, but resilient we are to flex with the change, and the more we make ourselves amenable to change, then the healthier we will be. The more resistant we are to change, people say, I don't want to change, I don't like change. Well, that's actually an unhealthy mindset, because resisting change, actually resisting anything, we put more energy into resisting than we would by just moving forward and embracing something new.
Sounds good.
Okay.
So Dr. Dupree, I had another question. So you were just talking about how much we learn as children and that we bring that into the workplace. But COVID, of course, has changed everything. So how do you see that the effects of a COVID pandemic? I'm not that far out of the workplace and still volunteer in a lot of places, where you see it has transformed the interpersonal relationships and the ability for people to connect.
Yeah,
So I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit.
Sure. That's sort of like $1 million question in terms of where we're going with that. I mean, this goes back to some basics in who we are, in the sense of, some people absolutely love working remotely, and they didn't have the need to engage and connect with people. It gave people more opportunity to develop with their families. And so that was really sort of the positive. At the same time, the divorce rate has been even higher in pandemic and post-pandemic phases. So not everybody's going to get the benefits out of COVID, either positive or negative. And I would say, how we manage through COVID and how we are managing in post-COVID really goes back to more of our emotional intelligence, our communication styles, because particularly in the communication styles, we have different needs. We have different underlying fears. We have there are just differences there that connect with people who need to be in person and be together versus those who love working alone or in small groups and can work by themselves till the end of the day, So I really take it back to, how people responded to COVID-induced changes and post changes. Really goes back to some of those basic human dimensions. Yeah. We
Thanks,
have a long,
Dr. Dupree.
we have a long way to go yet.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Dupree.
Last question is again from Najendra. So how do we build trust quotient at the beginning of a conversation with potential customers? At times we may sound overconfident and lose an opportunity.
Mhm.
How do we assess each stakeholder as their personas are different and our messaging has to be customized?
Yeah, that's a big question, Majandra. This is building trust is really, the bedrock of any relationship. And so, yeah, how do you get there? We are slow to build trust, but trust can quickly evaporate in nanoseconds. I'll use that word again. And so, again, I would say trust starts with, when preparing, know your client a little bit before you even start dealing with them, And that's why it's like, I can't believe that people are still just reaching out and not building any connection or any communication or rapport with me. And yet they want my business. And I've got to sort of I've learned to say is that, well, I get hit a lot. And so I'm real resistant. I'm reluctant to just go somewhere until I get to know a little bit more about you. So building trust would start by knowing something about your client, and then also asking questions like, I would really enjoy a long-term working relationship with you. And so help me understand what's most important to you in your relationships. What keeps you in those relationships that you want to continue doing business with them? Because I want to be that kind of, provider to you. And if I know that, then I can make sure I'm delivering on what you expect. And that's because I trust you, or I want to, gain your trust too. And it's a two-way street. So I would ask questions. That's where I talk about having the courage to be curious. And then, yeah, recognizing that we need there's no one size fits all when it comes to human dynamics. And so it's important we have a framework that we operate with. I like to talk about, construction in terms of we need a foundation, right, before we can build the house. But then each of us get to build our house differently. And so we can customize it. And so again, it's better to have a few really good clients than many different clients. It allows us to focus our expertise and our skill set towards that client more effectively. Because after all, doesn't any client want to feel that they are at the center of your work? Yeah. So yeah, we do need to customize, but that means knowing our client and our customer better. Yeah. I know one of the things, I work a lot with a lot of schools, as I mentioned, and so each school district operates a little bit differently. And so I will share resources and articles with them that I think are relevant based on conversations. I always make sure I have some conversations with them outside of the business I'm actually doing for them. I need to gain their trust so that they want to keep doing business with me.
Yeah, I think you nailed it down, Doctor. So much. Thank you so much for explaining and answering both the questions. I think the key topic for the conversation is about not talking, right? It's about communicating, and that stems out from the fact that as long as you understand the stakeholder well, right, and it is half the battle won. I don't have to do any over communication, just answer certain questions and get along, right? Because I think the first battle, right, is all about building the trust, and one wrong move, again you'll have to redo it maybe 10 times or 15 times, and that's a big lost opportunity. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I'll give you a quick example. I know we're getting low on time. Is that in the field of negotiations, it's pretty well known that when we give, and I used to teach law school too on mediation negotiation, is that if we tell students to go in and just start negotiating right away, get to the bottom line, focus on what the issue or the problem is, and try to get to an agreement. That's one thing. If the other group we say, before you start negotiating, exchange 2 or 3 things about you with each other. And so you have a little conversation first. And the research shows that the people who have that little conversation, who know something about the other person by just saying, tell me 2 or 3 things about you, opens up the doors and changes the mindset that they reach a negotiated settlement far faster and more efficiently. And they have a higher rate of settlement actually, and more quickly. So don't dispel. You may not come to your second nature to have these conversations, so to speak, but really important for human relations in business.
So that Stephen Covey quote that you gave, speak first to understand rather than to be understood, it is so important. Don't start selling right away. You know why you need to talk to me? Because I can do all this for you. No. Tell me about yourself. And I also think that the peak approach was very interesting. So it's a way to give someone an appreciation of the fact that you appreciate them, that you're present, that you're listening, and that you're aware of what they are bringing to the table.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
Yeah. And Lou, I may add to that. When you use the peak approach, people feel that they matter. And people need to feel that they're important, or that they are, what they have to say and do are contribute to the organization or to whatever you're doing. So it increases that sense of self for the individual as well.
So one last thing, Joe, you put something in the chat. Could you just read that to everyone? And especially want Dr. Deb to hear it.
Sure. This was just really kind of an observation. I know in my own situation I have here, I need to shift the focus, as we said earlier, from the area of expertise to making a connection. And one strategy, I think, for my own self is to be more committed to attending events that aren't directly related to the daily work, so I can hear what's important to other people. And also, just for me, it can even be as small as in the kitchen when you're making a cup of tea or something and somebody strides in, just spend a few more minutes, doesn't have to be that long, to chat a little bit and hear about what's happening in their department or with them. And then you really start to get better insight.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing that. You triggered my memory too, because I told everyone I would share something. But particularly networking events, as I've had a lot of clients who said, I go to these things and I walk away with nothing. I don't meet anybody and so forth. Again, it goes back to our communication styles. But one thing I do to coach them is that I always go to a networking event with, what's the purpose here of going? What do I hope to achieve? Have a goal in mind and insight, and then make a commitment that you're going to meet at least 2 to 3 different people to connect and have a conversation. And so one question could say is, well, hi there, tell me what brings you to this event. What are you hoping to get out of this? And you started the conversation. And I asked the question first. And now, well, that's interesting, because I sort of have that same thing, or I was sort of dreading coming here too. But now that we've connected, I feel much better, And so just simple questions like that, and have a clear understanding of what's your goal here. What do you hope to get out of it? And then 2, a commitment that you're going to talk to 2 to 3 people for meaningful conversation.
Thank you.
So we've actually run a little over, which is a good thing, I think. There are so many times that we have these meetings that it's like 5 after 7 and everybody's dropped off, and we're going and there's nothing left to talk about. This was chock full of great stuff tonight. Thank you so much, Dr. D.
Oh, thank you.
Actually, one small thing. Dr. Dupree, you were mentioning something about the CREST method, or the personnel was a test we could take.
Yeah. Here, I'll do that. It's called the DISC.
DISC, sorry.
Yeah. And that's I do that with my coaching a lot, and it's a powerful assessment to help you understand the 4 communication styles. But particularly as leaders in your profession or in your organization, if you take the management version, you not only get all this information for yourself, but also gives you ideas on how to manage people who have communication styles different than you. It's just loaded with great information. And I just realized too, I didn't put my website in here. So if you want more information, feel free to reach out to me. Okay. And so if you were to click on this link, it would take you to my website where you can take the 3 steps for mindset shift. The results go directly to you. I will tell you, they do come to me because I use them in my training and my coaching sessions. When I'm doing, half day or full day workshops for professional organizations, I have them take it too, because it's a great learning tool. I just did a pre-conference workshop for an organization called Meeting of the Minds. And it sounds like they do some similar kinds of things that many of you do. And so that was a lot of fun for a full day, and took them through some of the same concepts I took you through tonight. Of course, we spent all day, not an hour and a half, but yeah.
I've done the disc several times and always seem to wind up in the same quadrant. I can't move myself out of there. So again, thank you so much. Great evening.